To respond, Sean Fraser is the Minister of Immigration and also a Nova Scotia MP. Hi, Minister. Good to have you back on our program.
Pleasure to be with you, as always.
I do want to start off on the announcement today because I think there are a lot of people in Atlantic Canada who are watching and wondering if they will qualify, how they will, that kind of thing. Clarify, if you could, first for us, the money announced today, it's kind of for stuff that isn't covered under insurance or other disaster programs. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's right. So today, the Prime Minister joined a group of us in Nova Scotia to announce $300 million as part of the Hurricane Fiona Recovery Fund. The fund is meant to do precisely what you've identified, to cover some of the losses and expenses that don't benefit from other funding opportunities. Of course, this is in addition to money for disaster relief that we're matching through the Red Cross. It's in addition to the disaster financial assistance arrangement, which will offset a significant portion of what the province is doing. It's meant to really tackle things like losses to businesses that aren't covered through some other fund, damage to wharves and infrastructure that isn't covered by some of the other programs. It's going to be managed by ACOA. The reason that we've used the Regional Development Agency is because they're very closely plugged into people on the ground and understand, particularly with the business and nonprofit community, where the losses are. So it'll be rolling out as quickly as possible, but this is meant to complement some of those other funds that I mentioned to make sure that we cover as much as we can to help people who are struggling during the aftermath of an historic storm on the East Coast.
And just based on the examples you provided there, am I correct in assuming that if you're an individual, a business, or even a municipality, for example, and you need the help for infrastructure that isn't covered, all of those different entities can apply?
So the application criteria aren't set out quite yet. We're going to be working with ACOA to finalize those details and make them public as soon as possible. We want to make sure that we're not doubling up on areas that might benefit from different funds, some of which are coming from us, some of which are coming from provincial governments. But it's meant to cover the kinds of things like damage to infrastructure and losses to businesses. The specific eligibility criteria, for example, around whether municipalities can apply, will all be shared in the very near future. But we've got a little bit of work left to do just to make sure that we're not doubling up on an area that's already covered by a different program that might be offered by a different level of government.
When you say those details are coming soon, and again, sort of on behalf of Atlantic Canadians watching who have incurred that damage already, how soon and how soon can the money get flowing? I take your point on you don't want to double up on stuff. I think for people who need the money, whether it comes from that program or a different program, they just kind of need it.
Absolutely. And look, the timing of the funding depends on which program we're talking about. So, for example, the disaster financial assistance arrangement, which is meant to cover losses that were uninsurable, that is money that we reimburse the province for. So the provinces know that these arrangements exist, so they can make an announcement in the early days, as the province of Nova Scotia has, to support people, knowing that we're going to offer that backstop. We're actually in discussions right now about advancing interim payments because we know the losses will be extraordinary, and we see no reason to hang on to the money until the final receipts come due if we know the losses will exceed a particular figure. When it comes to the new fund that was announced today, I anticipate that we're going to be rolling out more details within the next number of days. Of course, developing a $300 million program is the kind of thing in ordinary times that happens over the course of many months. We don't have many months because of the nature of the emergency that we continue to live through in Atlantic Canada. So we're going to be rolling out details around eligibility criteria as soon as possible.
And just so that I'm clear also on the timing aspect of it, and thanks for answering the part about how many days before the eligibility criteria is released, but when it comes to actually accessing the money, I know that the money is spread over 2 years. Just, can you assure, again, people watching that they're not going to be applying in a month from now and waiting another 8 months or 10 months or 12 months or even up to 2 years to get that money?
Yeah, so one of the things that I think is important to understand is the recovery period for this disaster is going to take a significant period of time. I'm thinking about businesses in my own community, like the Pictou Lodge, which has had the roofs ripped off many of their accommodations. They've had to cancel all the remaining bookings for the rest of the year. In order to get somebody to come in and do that work, it's going to take a significant period of time, in particular because most of the contractors are hired doing repairs for many other businesses or homes around the region. So the expenses are actually going to be incurred over the next number of months, perhaps a year or two. And we want to make sure that we're having the funding in place that can continue to fund expenses that people may know of today, but might not actually incur until the work gets done a number of months from now. People should have a degree of certainty sooner than 2 years about whether they will qualify. But the reality, given the scale of damages that we're living through, is that it could take a significant number of months or even excess of a year in order to fully recover from this. And we wanted to design a fund that reflected that reality on the ground.
Yeah, certainly I'm not questioning that. I'm more saying if someone applies, even if they don't incur they incur the expense a year from now, and then they apply, they won't be waiting another year for the money to come in. It's more between applying, being accepted, and then receiving the money that my question is directed at.
Yeah, one of the things that ACOA has been particularly good at over the course of my time as a member of Parliament is processing applications in a timely way, usually a number of weeks when they have an application, and once it's eligible and they know it's going to be approved, the money flows very, very quickly. So I'm not concerned that there will be a significant period of time, like months between the application date and the date funds flow, as long as we're dealing with somebody who is in fact eligible under this new fund.
Okay, understood. Minister, I also want to ask you about federal support when it comes to the military, and in particular, the premier of the province you're in right now was in the county that you represent, Pictou County, last night, and he said this on our program. I'd just like to ask you a few questions about it, but first I'll play it for both you and the audience. Have a listen to Premier Houston.
We have 350 troops on the ground, I guess an additional 200 more. But we did ask for 1,000. And so there's the work there for the 1,000. The debris is pretty widespread.
So the Premier is asking for more troops to help with the recovery efforts and the rebuilding efforts in Nova Scotia, in particular help with the number of people who are still without power. Is your government, is there a plan to supply that, or is this the cap for how many people from the military, 550 now, are in Nova Scotia?
So I think it's really important that the public understand there is not a cap on the number of Canadian Armed Forces personnel that we're willing to send to respond to the challenges that we continue to face. What we've tried to do, and I should say thank you as well to my provincial colleagues, the sense of collaboration that I've had personally and with my federal colleagues with the provincial government in Nova Scotia has been quite good since even before Hurricane Fiona made landfall. I've had an opportunity to be in touch with the Premier, the Minister responsible for the response, MLAs in my area, and I found it to be very collaborative, and everybody seems to be focused on helping people in need. When it comes to the right number, what we do is assess the tasks that the provincial government has asked us for support with. We don't respond to sort of numbers that have been picked out of the air. We have actual personnel who are expert in figuring out how many people are needed to accomplish a given task. If the tasks that we received in the opinion of the officers making decisions about where troops should be deployed required 1,100 people or 800 people or 200 people, we would send the right number of personnel to accomplish the job. I spent the day, one of the days last week, with the Minister of National Defence and the commanding officer responsible for the response in Nova Scotia and PEI, and the view of the officer that I spent time with was that for the tasks that they've been asked to support, they had the right number of people. Should the tasks change, should more be asked of the Canadian Armed Forces, then of course we're here and ready to take those phone calls. But my sense is that we're going to continue to work with a spirit of collaboration to help Nova Scotians. My neighbors right now aren't interested in any kind of spat between different levels of government. They want help, they want their power back on, they want their cell phones to work. And we're going to continue to work with different levels of government to deliver the services that people depend upon. And to the extent that we can supply Canadian Armed Forces personnel to make that a reality, then of course we're willing to do that.
The Premier's point was that with 25,000 people still without power, and that was the number yesterday, that's why extra help from the military was needed. Are you accusing him of pulling that number out of thin air?
Look, I make no accusations.
That's the term you said. Pulling it out. You said pulling it out of the air. Is that what you meant?
My understanding from the conversations that I've had with folks in emergency preparedness and with the Minister of National Defence's office is that the number of troops that we've sent reflect the tasks that the provincial government has asked us to provide support for. To the extent that the tasks reflect the need for higher numbers, there's no cap. There's not a decision for reasons other than operations and logistics to have so far supplied 550 personnel to Nova Scotia. But to be absolutely clear, I don't want to make any accusations in a negative way about anybody who's involved with this. At the municipal level, at the provincial level, at the federal level, every single person I've spoke to has wanted to help out, to do right by their neighbors, to do right by their fellow countrymen who are living through a serious time of need, who've been impacted by a generational hurricane. Right now, we're going to continue to supply whatever support's necessary to make sure that the tasks that people need help with can be accomplished.
Minister, I'll leave it there. Thank you very much for your time.
A pleasure as always. Thank you so much, Vashi.
Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.